But today is one of those things hidden discussions that gets right down to the brass tacks of things. It gets down to how we're going to live, how we're going to eat, how we're going to build community. Something that's on the mind of a lot of folks right now as we look at the global chaos around us, the decline of the dollar, inflation's at 15% in some places. We're looking at people wanting to flee cities because crime is rampant. We're looking at the potential of nuclear war possibly around the corner if we can't get a handle on our reckless foreign policy, uh, silliness. And so all that creates this storm. But then you've got my guest today who has always been a voice of joy and kind of positivity. And he reminds me of what, when Senator Rand Paul first ran for the Senate in 2010. I remember he used to say, we need to have a joyful, happy liberty movement that seems like a man coming over the hill, singing a song and painting and having a great time laughing. Said that's Joel Salatin, our guest. How you doing, Joel?
I'm doing great, David. Thank you. That's a very gracious intro.
Yeah. Well, you've always kept a good focus on trying to explain the different aspects of why we need to embrace regenerative agriculture, or at least support people who are doing that, even if it's not doing the full fledged thing that you've built at your farm, Polyface, even if it's just doing some small things, having a few chickens at home or growing a little garden in your backyard. So many people are interested in this topic, and it's really exploding with all the negativity, your movement, and that it's not just you, but what you have tried to promote has really taken on another level of interest. I don't think you've seen this level before, have you?
No, I never have. I mean, this what I call a homestead tsunami is real. There are homestead conferences popping up all over the place. So this is, my kind of my theme has been non-chemical commercial farming. How do we farm without chemicals and all that stuff? And of course, we feel really great that with the war in Ukraine and the fertilizer prices going up 400% and you can't get wheat, we sit here and we don't buy any of that wheat and we don't buy any of that fertilizer. So it doesn't affect us at all, even at a commercial farm scale, and that's great. But the commercial farm scale is the number of people is minuscule compared to the number of people on small acreages. 1 to 25 acres that are goodness, even people with a suburban lot. It's amazing what you can do on a very, very small acreage. And so there is a true kind of an independence, a food security independence movement shaking the land, and it's good to see. It's good to see. If all of us sat down and made a list of everything that we're frustrated and angry about, it could be a pretty good list. And I think it's fine to do that, to kind of get it out of your system. Here's what I'm upset about. But what we need to do is take all that energy that's frustrated and angry, and flip it over, and turn it into positive innovations, so that we actually become hope and help when society becomes hopeless and helpless.
Right. Yeah. And that, one of the things that I quoted you in a recent piece I did for American Greatness about the idea that it's not, value and success is not about making money. It's about having community. It's having a sense of place. All these things are something that cuts across the divide of left versus right. I mean, liberals love their farmers markets, and yet, this is where you get farmers markets developed, is having farmers doing things the way you're trying to encourage people to do. You've developed an innovative thing that uses, kind of rotation between chickens and pigs and cows, and you've rotated them in a way that has something that people have made documentaries trying to figure out what you're doing and how to imitate it or learn from it or build on it. After all the years that you've been in the public eye, doing what you're doing, is there anything that has changed your perspective or approach to this whole movement in recent years?
I think the most recent kind of epiphany I've had that's kind of a big, well, just a big social understanding is that here we are for several decades, a couple generations for sure. We've been kind of marginalizing farmers. And even marginalizing the food system, marginalizing kitchens. We brought in squeezable squeezable cheese, TV dinners, hot pockets, and have as a society kind of embraced this idea that we don't have to bother ourselves with the humdrum chores of gathering eggs and cooking. We can just outsource that to somebody else. They'll take care of it. We can buy it in packages from the grocery store, and all will be well. So there's been this kind of idea that we will free ourselves. We will free ourselves from the being connected, almost being enslaved or being anchored, to these traditional chores of culinary and gardening and things like that. Well, here we are in 2022, and suddenly the lights are beginning to go off, and we're realizing, oh, the people who have actually enjoyed freedom in this space are the people who never quit participating. The people who participate, who have their gardens and their basement full of jars of canned goods, and a few chickens in the back, and maybe butcher a couple Thanksgiving turkeys, and maybe even have a milk cow, if you're really into it. But certainly a big gardens, herb garden, maybe some bramble fruits and things. The people who are cooking from scratch, the people who have decided to participate and not try to free themselves from this culinary and production drudgery. The people who participated are actually the ones who are now free, and the ones who decided to free themselves from participation are the ones who are looking at empty store shelves, supply line problems, and saying, whoa, maybe we're not as free as we thought. And so I think that's quite a societal wake up to realize that freedom comes from participation.
Right. Yeah. And getting out and learning a skill that's outside your comfort zone. What would you say to folks? A lot of my audience is going to be more younger. They don't have property. And because of the rigged situation where, costs of property and land and housing and so forth are pretty high for a lot of folks, and the dollar's pretty losing its value in relation to your wages increasing if you're not part of the urban elite, crowd that benefits from the Fed's policies. There's a lot of folks that say, man, farming is a rich man's game now. I can't get in that business. Maybe I have a couple chickens I can make some scrambled eggs with, but that's about it.
Yeah. Well, so my answer there, and it certainly is a great question. And there's no magic recipe, obviously, for doing this, but I can assure you there are people coming to this every day. We're in a homestead tsunami right now, that's for sure. And so I would simply say, starting, infants start walking by crawling, and almost all good things start embryonically. They start small. And so if the idea of farming does attract you, right now, just start doing some things for yourself. I mean, if you get a little worm kit to stick under your kitchen sink to take the kitchen scraps. You know, that's something you can do right now. Putting a quart jar of mung beans on the windowsill to make your own sprouts. Hanging an herb, you know, a PVC pipe pocketed herb pipe on your patio to make your own fresh herbs. Start cooking from scratch. Shut off Netflix, cancel your subscription, take that time and energy and go find your farmers in your community that are not dependent on so much petroleum, fertilizer, and foreign imports. You know, sleuth out those sleuth out Providence, and fill your table with less vulnerable Providence. You know, here on our farm, for example, right now in America, it takes $4 worth of depreciable capital infrastructure to turn $1 in annual gross sales. On our farm, we're 50 cents to $1. That's 800% different. Now, does that mean we don't use money? No. Does that mean we're not dependent on anybody? No. But it reduces that dependence. That's the point. And so if you find farms that run more on local carbon, compost, you know, that less imported stuff, as opposed to a Tyson chicken house that depends on everything from outside, you definitely will find a better supply chain. And so whether, you know, so you can obviously do some things yourself. I've written a book, Polyface Micro, that even has a chapter on how to have rabbits and chickens in a Manhattan apartment. So you know, you can do this on a footprint that's no bigger than a dog blanket. And so there are lots of cool techniques that you can do. The main thing you have to do is decide, I'm interested in it and I'm willing to put some time and attention on it. You know, change, progress doesn't come just by wishing and expecting it to fall in your lap. At some point, you have to, you know, you have to read some books. You got to do some sleuthing. You got to go meet some people. You got to, you know, you got to change some activities and some priorities. But never has it been more possible to get in. I will say this too, that you know, right now the average American farmer is 60 years old. So in the next 15 years, according to, you know, land grant university ag econ departments, in the next 15 years, 50% of all of America's agriculture equity, land, buildings, machinery, 50% of all America's land agriculture equity is going to change hands. This is an unbelievable opportunity. We haven't seen this kind of opportunity since Laura Ingalls Wilder and her family headed out on the Oregon Trail. And so if this interests you at all, there have never been more resources, and I don't think there's ever been perhaps a better opportunity to. I mean, I just had a desperate email right now. Family in Texas, and they have a farm, and they're desperate for a young person to come and run it. I mean, I have just you know, a routine request almost every day from somebody looking for a young person to partner with. And so if you're interested and you've got some savvy and get up and go and you know, you don't mind getting your fingers dirty, there are lots and lots and lots of opportunities out there to jump on and get your feet wet, get some experience. And my goodness, I've had letters from people. I'm 80 years old. Can you find me a young person to inherit my farm to? The problem is, yeah, but the problem is, you know, where is that worthy young person?
Right.
You know, most of the worthy young people are playing video games.
Right.
You know, the average American male between 25 and 35 years old spends 20 hours a week playing video games. So just
how much physical conditioning and technical expertise is required to do what, the kind of stuff that people are looking for in these farms? Is this something that takes years
yeah.
and years to be able
Oh
to
no,
get
no,
yourself to do?
no, no, not at all. You can be up and running pretty fast. A couple of months and you're a lot
Hmm.
as far as physical conditioning. Yeah, you'll go to sleep at night, but you won't have to have a gym membership either. And so there's some real positives. I mean, this is you know a small farm is probably the ultimate CrossFit gym,
Yeah.
and nothing's actually fabricated. You'll be carrying buckets of water, toting things, shoveling, um, doing all sorts of cool stuff. A lot of walking, and so it's a great physical conditioning
What do
thing.
you think? What do you think is the area of agriculture that's going to be most in demand for people who are thinking, hey, maybe I need to be a farmer and make this part of my vocation? Do I do squash? Do I
Yeah,
do buckwheat? Do I do
yeah.
chickens and cow? What is the thing that you think is the biggest opportunity for folks in a market sense? Is it
Uh,
beef?
yeah, well, everything has an opportunity to it. I think the main question is what floats your boat. Just David, to kind of maybe go a little bit deeper than some people think. The thing is that most of the time, interest in animals and plants are pretty specific on a person. Most people gravitate toward either plants or animals, and even within plants, they gravitate toward like annual produce versus um, uh, apples, orchard and vineyard and that sort of thing. So even with that, there's some breakdown. Usually people aren't really passionate and expert about the whole cross thing, which is pretty typical. Um, uh, so we believe in mutual interdependence. Um, you know, try some things. If you're just coming to this from a food security standpoint, I encourage folks to look at your grocery bill. What are you spending the most money on, and go there first. And most of the time, it's meat. 50% of the grocery budget is meat, poultry, dairy, animal proteins. 25% is dry goods, and 25% is soft goods like fruit and produce. And so that's kind of the division of the average home. And so I'm bullish. I'm bullish on animals because uh, that is something that most people that a lot more people don't want to do because it ties you down. Tomato plants don't jump out of the garden and run down the street.
Yeah.
Um, Goats can,
Yeah.
especially goats can, and so that's one of the reasons why we don't have goats at our farm. People say, "Why don't you have goats?" I say, "Because we had goats." Um, so you just need to experiment and try some things. And so there are lots of partnership opportunities out there for somebody who's willing to make a go of it and put in 110% and just learn and work at it. And it's hard to tell what kind of things open up. I'm a big believer in the Dave Ramsey proximity principle. If you're interested in something, get as close as you can to it, and things will open up as you become proximate to what you want to do.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting. So, uh, it seems that you're bullish on cattle. That's good. That's one thing, but
Yeah,
it's up to everybody. You're either a Cain or an Abel. You're saying you don't usually get a mixture of both, huh?
yeah, not usually. Although I mean,
Mhm.
we're primarily livestock here, but we certainly have garden and all that. But we don't, we're not in the selling produce business. But I mean, there are lots of times where, like a CSA, community supported agriculture produce operation, you can team up with it with some livestock. Those customers are already not buying at Walmart, so they're ready to do an alternative purchase deal, and you can do that. there's lots of land available. I mean, lots of land available. One of my coolest stories is a lady I met in Edmonton up in Canada, and she lived in a 6th floor condo, but she desperately wanted to do something with farming, but she didn't have any land, didn't have any money. She had one friend that had a backyard. She went to this friend. She said, "Would you mind if I put a 10-foot by 10-foot garden in your backyard just to grow something?" Friend said, "Sure, that'd be fine." So she put in her little garden. The neighbor's looking across the yard. She sees that, and she asked the friend. She said, "You think your friend would put a garden in my backyard? That's really, really pretty." And so she said, "Well, I'll ask her." So she asked her. She said, "Well, sure, I'll do it." When I met her, she was less than 2 years into this thing, and she was paying her salary full time, farming 18 backyards, had a part-time employee, and all of her entire farm tools were on saddlebags on her bicycle, and she bicycled from backyard to backyard, and was a full-time farmer. And the name of her business was On Borrowed Ground. And it just proved to me that there is almost no limit to the creativity and opportunity. If somebody wants to jump into this, they can jump into it, and it helps to jump in, of course, at a very, very small scale. That's one of the beauties of our portable chicken shelters out here with these meat chickens. If you want to grow chickens for Tyson, first thing you got to do is build a $500,000 house and have a big tract of land. But if you want to grow chickens like we do, all you need is a little couple $100 floorless box, and you move that every day, and you're in the chicken business. And if you like it, you can build another one, and now we have now a couple hundred of these, but they were built with cash flow over time, so that our scale came about not by centralization but by duplication, and that's a real big difference. How do we scale up? Well, we believe in scaling by duplication, so rather than centralization. So we have 5 hoop houses that we have. I'm looking at the chickens here from the desk window out there in these hoop houses. They're just coming in for winter, and we have, somebody said, "Well, why don't you make one great big one?" Well, because 5 little ones spread your risk. If the plastic blows off of one, you still got 4 left. You got a much smaller number of birds, much less stress, much less pathogenicity. You can care for them better. You can adjust them better. There's just a whole lot of reasons to have 5 smaller ones than one great big monstrous one.
Right. Very interesting. And you use the chickens and the pigs and everything to create a kind of ecosystem. If someone wants to do cattle, can they do regenerative agriculture without having the chickens and the other rotational methods that you use for your particular thing?
Well, yeah, you don't have to have the chickens and pigs to do the cows. Obviously, depending on where you are, like in Florida, things grow year round. So when you get hot enough, you can kind of adjust your grazing. But here, where we get snow and everything, we do feed hay, and in the winter we don't feed nearly as much as most people, because we move the cows every day to a new paddock, and so we can manage and stockpile, hold that forage out in front of them for the dormant time, and reduce the hay feeding for sure. But I would say, yes, you can concentrate on one thing, but like most things in nature, there's a symbiosis in building these complex relationships where you have the multiple species to actually work together. In the garden, we call this companion planting. Carrots love tomatoes. I think there's a book by that title. Nasturtiums keep bugs out of the garden. There are all sorts of companion planting things. there's a whole companion planting guide, to put to pair up plants in the garden together to create synergistic effects. And we do the same thing with the livestock.
Is there how long does it take if you have a conventional cattle operation, say in Florida, and it's been doing well or doing its thing for years, and you want to go the way you're doing things? How long does it take to get it switched over to the grass finished regenerative approach without chemical fertilizers and make it actually something that's making a profit? Does it take 5-year lag to get the soil healed and everything usually, or I mean, does it just depend on the situation?
Well, it does depend on the situation. It depends on how bad how bad your start point is. How crippled you are day one. But so that everybody understands, we have a kind of a three-tier or a three-pronged approach as we come onto a property to make it fly. The first one is access. We need to be able to get. If you can't get to it, you can't do anything with it. So access is critical. That would be, like a lane, you can drive on all weather. So you concentrate your traffic in one developed spot. So access is the first. Second is water. You can't do anything until you have water. So we lay water lines, which of course in Florida would be, you don't have to put it very deep. Here we try to bury them about 18 inches deep. We put them in with a subsoiler on the back of the tractor and just rip and pull the pipe through a rip slot. And in other words, I'm saying it doesn't take a backhoe. It can go in a whole lot easier. We have on our farm, we have 8 to 10 miles of buried water line that gravity feeds from permaculture style ponds we built up in the foothills of the high ground, and gravity feeds in this grid of gravity fed water with 70 pound pressure water, which is almost double your domestic water pressure. It's pretty powerful, and gives us fresh water over the whole place. So piped water, whether you pump it or gravity flow it or combinations thereof, are critical to be able to move. Because then the third one is control, and control is fencing, being able to control the animals, whether it's portable infrastructure or electric fencing for cows and sheep and goats or pigs, to be able to move these animals around. So every day, every couple of days, you're moving them to a new pasture spot. So it's access, water, and control, and you get those three together, and that is the development package that allows you to duplicate what nature has done with migratory multi-species choreography over the centuries. The deepest soils on the planet are not under trees, and they're not under bushes, and they're certainly not under plowed ground. They're under prairies, and those were built with multi-species moving across them in waves, from one year to the next. They didn't stay in one place all the time. They moved. So when you look at animals in nature, they're moving, they're mobbed up, and they're mowing or pruning. And so as those grass plants reach senescence, the animals come through and prune them off to restart that fast growth cycle and increase their metabolism of solar energy into decomposable biomass, whether it decomposes in the ground or in the gut as manure. It doesn't matter. You're just trying to convert solar energy into decomposable biomass. That's what ultimately feeds the soil and feeds the fertility. So in a place like Florida with sandy soils, flat ground, you probably won't do a gravity system, but you can sure pump it a long ways. You got plenty of water, and long days, lots of rain, lots of sun. And so, the sandiness does give you a little bit of a, make a little problematic to get started. But as you move these animals around in this choreography, you do get way more production, more biomass. I mean, here on our farm, we're getting about 5 times the county average. in grazing production. And so when you start getting that kind of additional biomass, you also increase a tremendous amount of organic matter in the soil. The organic matter holds water and reduces the sandiness of the soil. I'm talking about Florida. And here it reduces the clayiness of, so organic matter is everything in the soil. And when you can increase that organic matter, it changes things. 1 pound of organic matter holds 4 pounds of water. So when you tick up 1% increase in organic matter, you increase water retentive capacity 20,000 gallons per acre. 20,000 gallons per acre. So it's definitely worth ticking up a couple percentages of organic matter.
Yeah, it seems like the more people turn towards grass-fed and grass-finished cows for their food choices, that Florida would stand to be one of the biggest winners of such a thing, because I mean we've always been known as a cattle state. We were there. They say the original cowboys came from Florida, right? And that's what we're taught here in Florida history, that we were the original ones bringing in, doing a lot of the cattle, and then I guess because of the industrialization of the beef industry and the cartelization of the industry, it gets sick. It get kind of siphoned into this Western dominated frame that we have now, where everybody's supposed to be finished off on these grains and corn, right? But if we are to return to grass, Florida has an advantage because of its its seasonal system.
Yeah,
right?
it's long. Yeah, Florida's long growing season is a huge, in business we call this an unfair advantage. It's not unfair, but it seems unfair to people that don't have it. So southern Georgia, that whole tier down through southern Louisiana, Mississippi, that whole area is right for for grass finishing.
So, but yeah, I've heard people say, oh well, the grass in Florida is not really good. You can't get the weight or the fat, or I don't know, something about you can't really. We don't have good quality grass like you get up a little bit north, where there's different varieties of grass that grow over there, and that's one of the reasons why grass finished beef in Florida might be subpar or something in terms of a marketable product. I mean, obviously people are doing it. So it's someone's,
no question. There are plenty of people that are grass finishing beef in Florida. Certainly the species are different, and certainly local conditions differ, and different farms have, different Brix readings. Brix is sugar. Brix is a reading of sugar read through a refractometer. And your Brix reading will be very, very different from one place to another, and a lot of it depends on the organic matter in the soil, which then depends on the grazing management above the ground. So the fact is that the conventional mindset is not very creative, and is used to talking about what stops us instead of what makes us go. That's why we call them stoplights and not go lights. And so, it's easy to make excuses and fall victim to, I can't, when actually, there's lots of opportunities. You go out clear into dry areas like Idaho, Montana, the grass is stronger there, but it simply doesn't grow nearly as much because it's drier, it's higher in elevation, it's a harsher environment. So harshness tends to make grass grow more mineralized and more potent. So a pound of grass in Wyoming tends to pack a more bigger punch than a pound of grass in Florida. But a pound of grass in Wyoming is a lot harder to come by. You can get 3 pounds of grass in Florida to every half a pound in Wyoming. So I've been all over the world, and there's no place that has perfection. There's no paradise this side of eternity, and so you work with what you've got. And here we get snow, so we have to feed some hay, and so we leverage the hay making to give us a carbonaceous diaper in the hay shed in the winter to build compost. We make the compost with pigs. Pigs turn it, aerate it, turn it into compost, that goes back on the fields. And so we have this, this dormant, this 3-month, 100-day dormant season in the winter. So that's how we use it to, to leverage the productive capacity in our 9 months that we do have something growing. And Florida, you leverage something a little bit different. It's all based on your local conditions.
Right, right. I saw on your blog, the lunaticfarmer.com, you have a blog there. Your latest post says Roundup is great. Have you had an epiphany that Roundup really isn't so bad after all?
No, that's complete satire. That's based on the fact that last week, another trial absolved Bayer of being a cancer causing. Bayer won again, so they're on a roll now. They've won several in a row, and since 2018, Bayer, which bought Monsanto, which makes Roundup, has been in litigation over this glyphosate litigation liability stuff, and they lost the first couple, and everybody thought, oh boy, they're going to go down the tubes. Their stock prices dropped 30% or whatever. And I was warning people. I said, no, don't count your chickens. They're not out yet. And sure enough, here they are. 4 years later, they've refined their arguments, refined their techniques. They've got they're not doing any electronic witnesses anymore. They're bringing them in person so they can connect with these juries. They've gotten way better at poking what ifs. In other words, somebody gets cancer. Well, were they fat? Were they a smoker? Were they stressed because of a relational issue? Were they eating junk food? I mean, there's a host of things that, were they at Camp Lejeune?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so Bayer's attorneys have become way more skilled at questioning and creating seeds of doubt that glyphosate truly caused the plaintiff's problems, and they're really winning now. So it looks like they set aside $16 billion to settle these, whatever it was, 130,000 lawsuits, and they've already settled 105,000 of them or something. And of course, every win that they get gives them stronger negotiating power to negotiate lower and lower settlements. And so now it looks like their 16 billion set aside is way above what they needed. They're going to be able to actually get by with about 10 billion.
Wow.
So glyphosate is great. That's totally tongue in cheek. Where all this litigation's going. It's gone from horrible to great.
So what do you think needs to happen politically? Is there a political reform or investigation, or if there's I've looked at this, a few of the candidates that have been emerging and potentially being able to be elected to bring some new heat to the attention of the public related to things like toxic seed oils and the overwhelming evidence of the toxicity of these products, these rancid vegetable oils, particularly those who are cooking within the association to the carcinogenic effects. It's worse than cigarettes in some cases, people breathing in the fumes of vegetable oils on a regular basis. But you look at all these things in terms of the political scene. What do you think is there a particular bill or a particular policy idea in abstract that you think is first on your mind to empowering the local farming revolution to the next level?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. So if I could wave a magic wand, what I would do is just abolish the USDA and the FDA and the CDC and the whole lot of them.
Right.
You got to realize David, that the powers that be have been on the wrong side of almost everything. They've pushed chemical fertilizers. They've pushed factory farming. And when I say pushed, I mean they've used all of their political clout in the USDA, the legislature, including the land grant universities, the media has been lined up to buy into this. I mean, they pushed margarine rather than butter, and now margarine, you can't even find it. They pushed hydrogenated vegetable oil for how many decades, and of course now what's now the safe consumption of hydrogenated vegetable oil? None. It's not even a little. It's none. So when you look at the track record of what these government agencies have pushed, it's a pretty bad track record. And then if you want to come on to more recently, they pushed the 1979 food pyramid, which put Twinkies and Cheerios on the bottom, and gave us diabetes and obesity and all sorts of things. They've subsidized sugar cane and high fructose corn syrup. They've got, and then you move on up to COVID, and look how they pushed the vaccines, which are now very much in question as to their, not only their efficacy, but even their negative consequences. And so when you look at these big things, you begin to realize, if the government just weren't involved at all and let the market make its decisions, we would actually be healthier and happier as a culture. The government intervention in general is not a good thing. In fact, it's been the primary defense that Bayer has used in these glyphosate hearings. That EPA says it's okay. EPA
exactly
says
yeah,
it doesn't cause cancer. And so who would have thought when President Nixon started the EPA back in the early 70s, who would have thought that by now the EPA would be the number one credible source in a courtroom to absolve Monsanto of cancer liability in the glyphosate things. But this is the way it works. The Food Safety Inspection Service that Teddy Roosevelt started in 1906 after Upton Sinclair wrote The Jungle. That is the number one. That's the number one defender of the factory farm and centralized processing. And it has systematically, over the years since, it has systematically dismantled, marginalized, and criminalized, thousands and thousands of community abattoirs, slaughterhouses.
So in an alternate universe, if we didn't have so much government regulation of our food with the USDA and the FDA and everything, do you think that your model of farming would be passe? Everybody would have something like that in their community, and it would be kind of like, oh, what's so special about that? That's what we do. It's what the market would have naturally gravitated to more likely than what we have now if it didn't have so much deep capture of government intervention. Would you say that?
Yes. There's no question. Now, so you got to realize that in 1906, when seven companies controlled 50% of the American meat market, it was considered by Teddy Roosevelt and others as being a monopoly. Oh no, 7 companies control 50% of the American meat market. Well, so he started the Food Safety Inspection Service. Today, 100 years later, guess what? 4 companies control 85% of the meat market, and that we're told is a result of the free market. No, indeed, we haven't had a free market in food for a very, very, very long time. Here's the question I'd put to you: Do you think in 2020, when the store shelves went empty across the nation, that instead of having 300 5,000 employee centralized processing facilities to funnel our food supply through, if instead of that we'd had 300,000 community-based, 30 to 50 employee outfits funneling our food, would we have had as big a hiccup in the food system had we had 300,000 scattered around the countryside versus 300 centralized facilities? It doesn't take a great intellectual scientist to, I think, intuitively understand that we would have weathered that 2020 black swan event much more resiliently had we had way more options in the food system. It's all about options. And so I'm not interested in outlawing Tyson. I'm not interested in, running picket signs against, Iowa beef packers or Smithfield. What I want is just freedom for entrepreneurs to come to the marketplace and offer choice to us as consumers. I don't want to be told where I have to buy my food. I want to be able to buy it from any place. So if I were king for a day, I would create a new amendment to the Bill of Rights, whatever the number is now, the next number, and it would be what I would call the Food Emancipation Proclamation, and it would guarantee to every American citizen the right to procure the food of their choice from the source of their choice. Because right now there is no standing, there's no legal standing for a person who is denied raw milk or can't get it, or denied a backyard processed chicken, or home processed charcuterie, or any of these kinds of things. There is no standing when the government says no, you can't access that. Who do you sue for redress? There is none, because it's not a guaranteed right. And federal judges across the board have written this very, very clearly, written it that there is no freedom of choice for food in the U.S. That has been ruled from the bench and written in proceedings. So what I would like to see is to free up people's options and farmers' options to be able to sell to voluntary consenting adults in a consensual commercial arrangement without a bureaucrat being involved. Ultimately, when the government tells me what I can and cannot swallow, I call that an invasion of privacy.
Yeah, it's I think that it's connected to the historic need to go big picture for a moment. Governments and their claim of territorial monopolies on the use of violence. It seems to be that food and what you're allowed to put in your body for medicine and food has always been a foundational sense of sovereignty that governments want to assert over their people. Kind of like, this is who we are, and we eat this and we don't eat that. And that's what we're going to be defined by. Religions do that, right? Different religions have, this is who we are, and we define ourselves by, we use this medicine, we don't use that medicine. That's good medicine, that's bad medicine. That's good food, that's bad food. And governments have a religious structure the way they act too, which is, here we eat vegetable oils, we don't eat butter. We eat plant-based burgers, not Joel Salatin's burgers. This is who we are. We will take oxycodone, not medical marijuana. This is who we are. And we'll sacrifice you if you dare challenge the king's decree on these things, right?
Yeah. But the difference is that in a religion, you kind of get to, and I know there are certainly cultures that mesh religion and the state, but with religion, I can at least kind of pick whether I want to be a Hindu or an Israelite or a Christian or whatever. Or a Catholic, I can pick the group I want to be in, but when society, when the state, your neighbors, when the neighbors come and decide to tell me what I can eat, which is essentially, we got to understand when the state makes these prohibitions, that is essentially neighbors getting together saying we have the right to tell those people over there that they can't eat this or they can't do this. And so, you know, we have an incredible movement in our country to get the government out of our bedrooms. Women want them out of their bodies. And I don't want to, you know, get this too far down a rabbit hole, but, you know, we've never had more interest in getting people out of our bedrooms, out of our sex, out of our all that sort of thing. And it's time to get the government out of our stomachs as well.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have had these recent mandates for medicine. We wouldn't have had any of this if we didn't have a precedent of a war on drugs and a war on local farmers and, you know, farm freedom. So it all goes hand in hand. The precedents of moral assertiveness.
It sure does. Yeah, it sure does. And we certainly would have had. I think it's a fair question to say, if the government hadn't gotten involved, if the government had never told us to eat Cheerios and Twinkies, if the government had never told us to eat hydrogenated vegetable, if the government had never told us to take a vaccine for COVID, if the government had, I mean, you can go down this list. The question is, would we be a happier, healthier people? And I would suggest that we would be. Certainly, if it weren't at the federal level. This is another nuance of this discussion, but the 50 state experiment that our founders envisioned had an extremely small federal footprint on the country, and left almost everything up to the states. You can read the Constitution and see it. Whatever hasn't been arrogated to the federal goes to the states. But over the last, several decades, we have gradually eroded that to where now the states are essentially impotent, and we have this massive federal shadow hanging over the country. And this is one of the reasons why we're so torn up right now as a nation, because the stakes are so high. If the federal were very small, and we had all these issues being from gay marriage to transgender to vaccines to meat and poultry safety to education to all this, if this were addressed at the state level, then we would have 50 different experiments going on, and we could look around and say, well, here's what they're doing over there. Look what they're doing over there. Here's what they're doing over there. But as soon as I go to my county and say, let's have a food sovereignty act where within the confines of our county, anybody can engage in food commerce without a bureaucrat being involved, as long as it's voluntary consenting adults doing this. If the county passed that ordinance, immediately the federal would come in and say, no, that's illegal. You don't have that freedom. You can't do that. And so our problem right now is that we can't even experiment on a more unregulated, liberty-minded food system. One of the last times I was in Richmond at a hearing on a cottage food bill, the head of meat and poultry inspection in Virginia took me aside at one of the breaks. He said, Joel, we can't give people food choice. If we let people choose what to eat, we couldn't build enough hospitals for all the sick people that would eat bad food. And he was completely sincere. I don't think for a minute that he was insincere, making this up, making a joke. I think that's truly his mindset. And I would just say, the problem though is we don't have the freedom to experiment. I don't know if he's right. I mean, I really believe if people had food choice, costs would come down, options would increase, and we'd actually be healthier. And farmers would certainly have a more vibrant income potential as entrepreneurs. So I think there's a bunch of positives that would happen if we would allow some freedom in food choice. But I can't prove it because it can't happen anywhere, because the federal comes in and dominates everything and doesn't allow those kinds of experiments to happen. And so, here we are kind of stuck in this thing. And so I would be happy with even just a federal legislation that would simply allow experiments like I've just suggested to happen at the local level. Let it happen. And if a locality tries it, and sure enough, everybody gets sick and the hospital can't take care of all the sick people because it's bad food, well then probably nobody else will do it.
I mean, don't we already have farm freedom? Isn't that why you have your operation and people go and buy your product?
There's a host of things we'd like to offer that we can't legally without commercial kitchens, without federal inspection. I mean, in order to sell a T-bone steak, the beef has to go to a federal inspected slaughterhouse. I can't sell raw milk. I can't sell butter. I can't sell ice cream. I can't sell chicken broth. I can't make charcuterie. I can't make bologna. I can't smoke anything. All of these things come under some sort of
processed food or something.
A government. I can sell a cow. I can sell a pig. I can sell a chicken. But most people don't want to buy cows, pigs, and chickens. They want to buy pieces. and that means you've got to get the animal dead. You got to get it butchered and gutted and processed. And there's where there's where all the regulations kick in.
I see. And that's the middlemen that get in there and make all the money off of the farmer, right? With all those regulations.
Well, yeah. If you gave the farmers that freedom, they would absolutely. I mean, they would absolutely chip away at the, at the power, position, prestige, and profits of the industrial food complex.
How important is a bill like Thomas Massey's Prime Act, which he has introduced in the House several times, which would basically help, from what I understand, beef farmers sell directly to the consumers without having problems as much?
Yeah.
Is that a critical bill to the first step of farm freedom, or is there something that needs to go further than that?
It's a wonderful bill. It's a wonderful bill. I mean, it's such a tiny step that you can hardly believe that there's opposition to it. But boy, when you open up the opportunity for competition with the big players, they're pretty adamant against it. And yes, it would be a major thing.
What are they afraid of? It's what's so funny, because I think one of the reasons why people don't believe that is they think to themselves, what do these big dairy companies, why would they be terrified of some little local farmer down the roads, doing raw milk? That's not why. That's what I'm trying to get my mind into the mind of the average consumer who buys into this statist mythology. And they say, oh, look, they're just trying to take care of people. People can get seriously sick from raw milk if it's not properly, handled and heated and all those different things. That can kill people. And of course, they use that for all these famous products we've heard about recently, too, as to why you had to be forced to do something that was a lab rat experiment. But still, so that's starting to pierce the veil of that whole thinking. But still, there's that fundamental kind of mythic faith that they say, it's just, listen, it's not about some big dairy. They're not scared of some little farmers selling raw milk from their cows. They couldn't care less. That's not why they have lobbied for these regulations. They just feel like this is the safe and healthy, standardized way of producing milk for the American custom. That's all it is. They have good,
They do. I'm convinced that they have good intentions. Unlike many of my friends in this movement, I don't see conspiracy lurking behind every wall on this. I actually think they have good intentions. They just believe that fundamentally they believe that bureaucrats are more honest than business people. And that's a fundamental worldview, thought process. When you think that bureaucrats are more honorable and honest than entrepreneurs or than business people, that's quite a that's quite a whatever a faith. That's quite a faith in government versus a faith in your neighbor.
Right.
And again, Ayn Rand, when she was writing, somebody was asking Ayn Rand, author of Atlas Shrugged. She's still probably this our culture's quintessential articulator of the libertarian concept. Somebody asked her, well, but if we don't have all these regulations, and these big guys are, big companies are going to get bigger and bigger, and you get monopolies, blah blah blah. And she said, show me one great big company that didn't get there with some sort of special governmental concession, and then let's talk. But you can't show me one. I don't care whether it's the railroad, shipping, ironworks, building, now Google and everybody else. You can't show me one that didn't have some sort of special governmental governmental concession to help it get there. And so I'm not ready to posit for a minute that an unregulated system brings more big players. I think it brings a whole lot of little players.
I don't think it should be called unregulated. It should be called market regulated, or, property based regulations, or court regulated, because you're still going to have, in fact, more so, you will have civil liability restored, right? Because right now these crooks hide behind, well, the FDA says it's good, so don't blame me. And once you remove that, now you can kick their tails when they sell you something that is garbage,
That's exactly what's the first thing whenever there's a food recall, whenever there's some sort of a tainted food thing, what's the first thing the CEO says when he gets on his does his press conference? First thing he says is, we have complied with every government requirement, and so they hide under the skirts of the bureaucracy.
Isn't that just like what we see in the New Testament with the story of the Pharisees, always hiding by the letter of the law, but yet underneath it, there's a lot of rotten corruption under. And again, most people are good intended, but there is a lot of incompetence. There's a lot of waste. There's a lot of built-in bureaucracy, and there's a lot of, in my opinion, dishonesty that gets baked into this government. I call them regulations because they're rigged. They're not regulation. They're regulations. They're rigged to rig the market for the powerful. And look, if you're a brat and you're living off of regulations making you wealthy, you're lazy and you're entitled, you're a welfare queen or king, and you need to have it pulled out of you. I'm sorry. And that's why I break from the MAGA movement when they talk about, oh, we need to help our farmers and pump billions of dollars into big soy. It's like, wait a second, you guys talked about soy boys. You're literally you're taking my tax dollars to make us soy boys. Stop. We don't need more big soy farms. We need free markets.
Absolutely. Free a non-interventionist approach is the one that favors the greatest amount of choice and competition within the marketplace. That's for sure. And so we don't need to help anybody. Nobody needs help. They just need to be innovative, creative, savvy, and figure it out. And it's not fair to to throw the government's largesse behind anybody. The fact is that that the fraud. I loved your use of that term. The fraud within these regulatory agencies is pretty incredible, and all of the pretty much all these regulations are scale prejudicial. If you're big, it's easier to comply. If you're small, it's harder to comply, and that inherently, in and of itself, is an unfair platform. It should. Somebody says, well, give me an example of one that's not prejudicial that way. Okay. Speed limits. It doesn't take any more effort to put your foot on the brake of an 18-wheeler as the brake of a Prius. That's a totally scalable regulation, a speed limit. But if it becomes a lot easier to comply with the regulation, if you're making a tractor trailer load of bologna versus a 5-gallon bucket of bologna, that is a highly prejudicial regulation that denies choice in the marketplace, both for buying and selling.
It's true. You know, what would you say if Elon Musk came to you and said, "Hey, look, I just bought Twitter for 40 billion or whatever, and I've been reading your blog and watching your interviews with David Gornoski's show, and I've really decided that's my next big thing as the richest man in the world. I want to basically carve out several $billion to tackling the food problems that you have identified." What do you think? I mean, if you had kind of scale money like that, people, what would be a pressing way to really scale up what you're doing at your farm? Not necessarily, I'm not saying with you as an organization, could be that way, but just how to scale this up so that it doesn't have to be a niche thing that people who tend to be into Whole Foods type stuff and crunchy stuff and that's still a kind of elite group of folks. It's becoming more mainstream, but it tends to have its little niche audience. How do you take, if you had big backer type visionary minds that said, man, we want to do, what can we do to make this scale up for everybody so that it becomes 85% of meat, for example, is with little farmers everywhere? What would that look like? How would you guide them or advise them?
What an interesting question. I'm not sure has been ever put to me just like that. So that shows how clever you are, that you're as many as these things as I do, that there's still room for a little bit of a new question. I have had conversations with, Wall Street investors saying, how can we move sustainable ag forward? And they have deep pockets. So here are a couple of ideas that I think I would tell Elon. Number one, the problem is that the regulatory climate is so scale prejudicial that small outfits, community abattoirs, community canneries, community food processors simply can't get started because they don't have enough throughput to pay the $2 million overhead to launch. And so one tremendous thing would be to actually offer not just the money, but it's the technical thing. It's farmers like us that want to direct market our beef, pork, and chicken to local customers and stuff. We don't like spending all day on the phone with a bureaucrat, haggling over HACCP plans. That's hazardous analysis, critical control point, regulatory compliance. So what we desperately need is we need some umbrella outfit. You see the bureaucrats in the inspection service, they relish picking off little people one at a time. And the laws, the regulations are so subjective that the guy in Kansas City can tell the little farmer that wants to do something over there, he can tell him one set of things, and the guy in Albany, New York, gives another whole set of things, and the guy in now all the regulations are the same. It's the same books, the same everything, but it's so gray and subjective that you get very, very different stories from people. So there's no advocate. There's no like what Michael Ferris did with the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, where he created a national umbrella advocate for people who were facing truancy violations and things under the homeschooling laws. That was the catalyst that brought homeschooling to mainstream, because now people didn't fear, having their children, my mind's on chickens, having their children taken away for being negligent parents because they were homeschooling. And so what we desperately need today is a similar kind of umbrella advocate that can design and so when the guy in Portland says no, we're not going to allow that. Well, wait a minute. They're letting it happen in Albany. It's happening in Cleveland, and it's happening in whatever, Tupelo, Mississippi. Same rules, same laws. What's your problem? And some sort
You
of
talk about like a legal defense fund, like a deep pocketed legal defense fund that could swoop in and beat these things.
Yeah, but more than that, a technical designer advisor, so that if I want to build one, I can call these folks up and they have the blueprints, the design, the compliance, the HACCP plans, and it's just a cookie cutter. Boom, we're in. Boom, we're in. And if we had that kind of,
you say design what again? A chicken processing or
whatever, a meat, a chicken pot pie facility, a bone broth facility, whatever, charcuterie, somebody that make hot dogs, bologna, pepperoni, this, all of this stuff could be templated. You could have this template with the technical expertise, so that I, as the entrepreneur, I don't have to argue with the bureaucrat. I have an advocate. I have somebody else who loves to do that kind of thing, and as a go-between. So I can worry about where we're going to get the pork from, how are we going to grow these sheep, how are we going to grow these cows, where are we going to get this milk, or tomatoes or whatever. I can deal with that as the food entrepreneur. And then you've got this almost a compliance entrepreneur that deals then with the bureaucracy to facilitate that these neighborhood facilities, 20 to 50 employee facilities that have quite a bit of capacity, actually, that they could just proliferate.
And most of the red tape is happening at the state level. Is that right?
No, most of it's happening at the federal level.
At the federal level, but the states are the ones. The local bureaucrat at the state level is the one executing it, or how does that work?
Well, you have a like most of these government regulatory agencies, it's quite a labyrinth. But you have the Food Safety Inspection Service, FSIS. That's at the top. That's at the federal level, and then you have states. About half of the states have no inspection, so everything is federal, and about half the states are partners, where they write the federal regs into the state, and the state also has state inspectors, but those state inspectors are under the authority and auspices of the federal inspectors. Now, this is a federal thing. So what happens is, if a state starts to go errant, if a state starts to grant a little too much freedom, the feds will come in and say, look, they'll whip them into shape, say, look, you need to tighten this up. If you don't tighten it up, we're going to withdraw inspection from your state, and you won't be able to export anything. So that's the extortion. That's the extortion guillotine that the feds hold over the states. That if the state becomes the least bit errant, the feds can come in and say this state has gone rogue, and so we're not going to inspect anything in the state, and suddenly the state can't import anything or export anything.
Wow. Yeah, that needs to change. Can you draw up a 10 commandments that would be the top 10 things, regulations that need to be removed, like specifics that would maybe, if you knock those out at the federal level, would be that way, without getting, because we're not going to do it the way we want it right now, where we abolish the FDA and all these different things that are unconstitutional. But if you could have a 10 commandments or maybe even 5 or something that say, thou shalt not do this about the chicken factory. Don't tell us to put the sink here. Like, there's got to be some things that would probably eliminate 70 to 80% of the problems that the little guy has. Could you do that, or have you drawn that up yet?
Absolutely. I spent a day with Rand Paul, actually, back before he ran for president, and he was looking at this very issue, because in poultry, we do have a federal exemption of 20,000 birds for for home scale processing, which is that's a pretty big bunch of chickens, 20,000. That's not so Rand Paul, what he was looking for, he was saying, well, what would be the equivalent in everything else? And we just that one has been on the books since 1967. Nobody's gotten sick, nobody's been killed. It's so it has a wonderful precedent track record.
What are you saying? What's on the books since 1960?
It's called public law. It's called Public Law -492, and it's called the producer grower exemption.
Right, yeah, now, we're getting into the brass tacks of this. I like this.
We're getting the brass tacks. So it's Public Law 90-492, which is a federal exemption that allows a producer grower to produce and process up to 20,000 chickens a year without inspection, and that is exactly why pastured poultry has gone across the nation like it has, and thousands of little poultry folks are either making a living or close to it with pastured poultry because of this federal exemption. And it's been in place since 1967. Nobody's gotten ill, nobody's gotten hurt, so it has a wonderful track record of precedent.
And you can ship that chicken anywhere out of state, or has to be in state?
No, it's only in state. It's intra-state, so it's only in the state. But now, what's interesting now is the question that if you buy it, if you order it online, so I call it a Virginia sale and ship it to you, is that legal? That right now is a gray area. So I don't want to get into those weeds right now. All I'm going to say is that this is a wonderful numerical exemption. It defines two things. It gives a number, so it caps the number, and number two, it defines the kind of relationship that the farmer and buyer have to have, because it's limited to an end user. So I can't put these chickens at Walmart. I can't put these chickens in a grocery store. They have to go to an end user. Now, that allows me to sell it to restaurants, because restaurants are end users. Institutions, cafeterias, I could sell it to a Kroger deli, because that's an end user. In other words, it's going to come out. Nothing else has to be done with it before it comes out after that sale. So I can sell it to a food boutique that does rotisserie chicken, and people buy it. So that's the end user thing. So it defines the number, and it defines the type of transaction. I see no reason why couldn't we extend that to milk, to butter, to beef, pork, goat, sheep. It can be extended across the board to anything, and by definition. So you have your cap and you have your transaction type. Another option is simply to go to a complaint system, to where anybody can do anything, and if there's a complaint, then that's when a government agent gets involved, and so that's a possibility. Another one is actual empirical testing. We now have the ability to test for numerous pathogens and toxicities in food items very, very cheaply, and so why couldn't like a little R2D2 be supplied, and we take a swab test, once a week or whatever, of a chicken or a gallon of milk or whatever, and you do it. In Great Britain now, David, they're actually using artificial intelligence with infrared frequency. So all pathogens like Campylobacter, Listeria, E. coli, those kinds of things, they emit a certain frequency in the infrared spectrum. So you can shine a black light on them, and with artificial intelligence, you can take pictures and get whether there's any on them. And the beauty of that is you get rid of the inspector. That now there's no subjectivity. You just check it and for efficacy, and we're good to go. and so there are numerous kinds of remedies that are type, scale, empirical, relational. There are numerous remedies here, and the fact that nobody is willing to even step into that arena. Like I said, Rand Paul was interested in it, and then he ran for president, and I think it's just off his agenda right now. But
so he never put together an actual bill that would reflect his interest to
no,
standardize that
no.
pork, the pasture
Well,
chicken exemption to all forms of animal
Yes.
agriculture, right?
Yes, exactly.
So that needs to be completed.
That should be completed. And so what Thomas Massey has done with the Prime Act is not even on the radar compared to what Rand Paul was getting ready to propose. And the amount of pushback that Massey has gotten indicates that Rand Paul would have been crucified. But anyway,
but think about this. Go ahead.
Yeah, there are absolutely very credible baby steps that could head us down this path if we had some wind under our sails.
So what could happen in this scenario that could be a window is if, let's say, the Republicans win the majority in the Senate in this midterm.
Yes.
And we get a Blake Masters, J.D. Vance in Ohio.
Yeah.
Liberty type on some serious issues.
Rand Paul.
And then you've got Rand there. And so now you've got a block of just those three alone, maybe throw in a Mike Lee or somebody else. Now you've got a little bit of a block, a Liberty block, that when you're 50-50 in the Senate and the Republicans have a little slight majority by one or something, now you've got some negotiation about that next farm bill. You know what I'm saying? And that's how you get the job done. It's about having that little coalition that says, look, we're going to work together. You're not getting our votes until you put this farm freedom amendment into the farm bill. That's how I think that would go. Seems like, I mean,
absolutely. See, David, the problem has been forever that there is what should I say? There is a love for small farmers at the federal level. A lot of people don't want small farmers to go away. In fact, I met with Tom Vilsack in a secret meeting back when Terry McAuliffe was governor of Virginia, and I got invited. I was one of like 12 people that got to go spend about 4 hours with Tom Vilsack, and he led his remarks. You'll love this. He said, "We have to keep these farms in business because farm boys make the best soldiers." How do you like that? Underneath, so whether they want soldiers or whether they want food security or whatever, the fact is that
that's not anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah. So the fact is that
most farm boys are clocking in at 75. I mean, they ain't gonna be soldiers anymore.
That's right. So, but they know that farm kids grow up with we figure it out, right? We do it without money, and we got to use our brains to fix stuff and build stuff and make stuff.
That's not the new military nowadays. Now you got to be a gender identity person. So.
Yeah.
I mean, just as a farm guy, have you seen cows change gender, by the way, while you're working on the fields?
Never seen it happen. Never seen it happen.
Sorry, just a little dovetail, I'm sorry.
They don't seem to be confused at all.
No chickens have gender fluidity?
No. I've never seen a rooster start laying eggs, and I've never seen a hen do what roosters do.
Now, Mr. Jones is probably going to get a lawsuit for what he said about the frog community, but do you see any frogs in Virginia near you that also have gender fluidity issues?
No, I haven't seen that either. Even if they are amphibians, so they don't know whether to be in or out of the water, but they know what their sex is at least. Yeah. So here we are with an I agree, with an opportunity, and the problem has been that the love for the small farmer at the federal level has always been expressed with some sort of subsidy agency. We'll help you do this. We'll help you
Right.
build a greenhouse. We'll help you do this. We'll help you. You know what? We don't need any help. We just need you to get out of the way and let us sell. If you get out of the way and let us sell, we'll be just fine. Thank you very much. And so
They have a patronizing love of the small farmer,
yes,
like a little stand they want to go to on the way
exactly.
to work. They don't want you to be a big farmer. They want you to be really small and helpless.
Well, yeah. Well, they like so many things. They're trying to help you on things that are not the weak link, and so the money gets wasted. It gets squandered. It's not the weak link, and so somebody builds their greenhouses with some sort of government grant program, and then they want to value add the tomatoes into tomato soup and tomato juice, and suddenly now they have a $500,000 kitchen they have to build, and so the whole thing collapses because they can't get over the product to market. The convenience food market is huge because people have largely abandoned their kitchens, and so the butcher, baker, and the candlestick maker that used to be embedded in agriculture areas has now industrialized to an industrial scale with no trespassing signs and razor wire and security gates all around it. And so as we have Uberized, this is a good little thread here, David, as we have just what Uber and Airbnb did to the transportation and hospitality industry using the internet. Here's what happened. The butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker were always embedded in the village. Everybody knew who the good ones were and who the bad ones were. And so there was a kind of a market correcting way to deal with the good ones and the bad ones. But with industrialization, the butcher, baker, candlestick maker got so big that they got hidden behind razor wire and fences, and the American public saw that and said, "Whoa, what's going on back there? We better have a regulatory agency bigger than the butcher, baker, and candlestick maker." And so they developed the FSIS, the FDA, and all these agencies to run herd on these opaque, scary industrial scale food systems businesses. Well, here along comes the internet, and we have now. Now we have real-time accountability, which of course launched Uber. I mean, who would have guessed 50 years ago that people all over the world would jump into cars that with a completely with a driver that hadn't gone to any special driving school, and say, take me to the hotel, but it works because there is real-time accountability. I can rate the driver can rate me, and so it works. Airbnb the same way. And so what we desperately need now is to Uberize the food system, to recognize that this massive industrial scale regulatory structure that grew up around an industrial scale scary industrial scale food system is now obsolete because the internet has brought gunpowder to us, and we peasants now have the power of real-time auditing in our hands, and we can Uberize the food system just like we Uberize the transportation system, and just like we Airbnb the hospitality system.
Yeah, I mean, so a couple questions on that then. Can you guys use, and do you use a Uber-like system to move food to your customers directly? And I know you don't mean it in that way, but that popped into my head to think, can you get that food delivered directly to your customer?
Absolutely. We ship nationwide, and it's all done on the internet. We ship every Tuesday using UPS, and it's fabulous. So anybody in the America can get bacon, T-bone steak, whatever, on their doorstep in a couple of days.
Is there an
And
app like Uber that allows people like you and all the other farmers to be pulled up online and be able to see, oh, they've got chicken thighs for sale. I'm going to have that shipped directly to me, and I want a driver to drive it to me just like they can drive it from my Walmart. Instead, I want them to drive them from Joel Salatin's farm and get me some chicken thighs or
well,
something.
our driver is UPS.
Right.
So
No, I know the
uh,
way you have it
so
set up. I'm just wondering if an app like
oh
that for
yeah,
like you were
yeah.
just saying Uber. I'm thinking out loud here to think,
Oh, okay,
could there
yeah,
be
yeah,
an
yeah.
Uber type app that
Hey,
could help
listen,
people find farmers like you that
yeah,
could be giving them
listen,
food?
yeah, listen. Um, uh, the answer is yes, all of the above. In fact, if we did have the the ability to do this easier. In other words, if in order for me to sell a T-bone steak to you in Florida, if I didn't have to take the beef 30 miles away to a slaughterhouse and let it and have it go through a bunch of regulatory procedures that add $200 to the processing cost, and then go up there and bring it back here, if I could just do that here, process it here, keep it here, drop off $200 because of all that transportation and inspection cost, then suddenly food becomes way cheaper. Our food drops way down. Suddenly that supposed elitist food price that you see, it has nothing to do with actual cost of production. It's the
It's the red tape compliance, right?
it's the extra, it's the surcharge. It's the surcharge we pay for an industrial scaled inspection system applied to a small neighborhood processing facility.
So we need to get to doing a poultry exemption for all the different animals would be the best
Yeah,
win for this right now.
yeah, absolutely.
And what
That
does
would be
20,000 chickens a year average in terms of profit?
gross would be somewhere in the between 300 and $400,000,
Mm-hmm.
and profit would be in the 30% of that.
And see what happens is that Joel is what happens is they do that on purpose. They cap it at that so that a lot of the industrious entrepreneurs say, well, that sounds like a nice thing, but I want to be a millionaire like with an app, right? And so they do that on purpose to handicap the obvious natural economic incentive for folks who want to be little Elon Musk types and make very successful business. And obviously you don't have to be a billionaire to be a farmer. I get it. But the point is when you it's just like the cottage food laws, right? Oh yeah, you can sell this much, but up to this much. And it's meant to give it that kind of quasi hobby side job
Yes,
dynamic
yes.
rather than, no, I'm going to devote my entire life, everything poured into this is who I will be and what I'll produce, right?
Yeah. Well,
That's got to change there.
I agree. I agree. That is true. That's why I like the definition of the end user. That's perfectly fine with me. In other words, if you're buying directly from the farmer, I think it should be limitless because that relational transaction becomes its own inherent protection against unsafe food.
Are you referring to, is this something that Rand was looking at, or is this something that, when you say the end user, is that another way of dealing with the problem?
Well, yes. So you can define what kind of transaction this is. In other words, you can't put it in a Walmart, you can't put it in a secondary place, but as long as it's in a primary sales situation where it's the end customer buying it directly from the farmer, that close link, if you will, in the chain of food custody provides its own protection for safety.
Right.
In other words, right now, David, the whole system in the country for food safety works on paperwork. It works on paperwork. It's all about checking boxes and filing the right papers, having the right HACCP plans noted in your thing. I could fill your head with stories about those kinds of things. But as soon as you go to a direct sale where you and I are transacting business together, then suddenly our own relationship is as efficacious as all of those boxes that are checked in those piles and piles and piles of government forms. And so,
But don't they still require you to have those boxes checked to do a relationship like that?
yes, they do now. They do
Yeah.
now. I'm suggesting that is superfluous,
Right.
that it's unnecessary, because of the nature of the nearby or close, the nature of the close transaction. And now I will tell you this: there is a guy here in Virginia who's in the General Assembly. He's planning to put in a bill in Virginia to allow a farmer and a potential customer, I guess mainly for a potential customer, to sign a waiver sheet recognizing this food has not been government inspected. I assume all responsibility, blah, blah, blah. And they can sign that waiver sheet to try to create some freedom here within the state of Virginia. We tried that about, I don't know what, 15 years ago. And our Democratic Attorney General said waivers are meaningless and don't work, and shot us down. I tried that with the minority leader, the Republican minority leader in the House. He was our delegate there, and a great guy. And so anyway, we didn't pursue it at that point because because it was shot down at that point. But now we have a Republican governor, Republican Attorney General, and so this guy's gonna kind of resubmit that idea of a waiver and let people take responsibility. But of course, see, in the argument, imagine this. So what you're saying is, if you say, I recognize this food did not pass through a government agency, but I'm okay with that. I trust the farmer. I'm glad to eat it. The problem is, so most people would say, yeah, you should have the right then to eat it if you want to. But the problem is, as soon as you get down there to the General Assembly, the argument will be, well, wait a minute. If somebody consumes unsafe food, then they get sick, and that becomes a liability to society because society is paying their medical bill. So then you get embroiled in the fact that because health costs are now borne by society through Obamacare, whatever, Medicare, Medicaid, all that. Since health costs are primarily borne by society has a financial interest in precluding risky behavior on the part of anybody. And so suddenly there's this societal interest in whether I eat this or not,
right,
or whether I take this vaccine or not, or whether I go to this place or not. And so it's so in the public debate arena, the health, the consequences of society picking up the tab for health, that becomes kind of an overriding concern among people, among politicians, and it's exploited, of course, by the drug companies and the medical field and the doctors and all that, to say, we want to make sure that nobody participates in risky health behavior. And boy, we all know that raw milk is risky health behavior. And so they come into that interventionist mindset partly because a certain group of people, there's a lot of people who don't want the financial liability of having to pay for somebody's sickness that they allowed to happen. This is why we have seatbelt laws, why we have bicycle helmet laws.
Some of it's pressure from the insurance lobby, then, right?
Absolutely, yeah. They don't want those claims, but look, I wear my seatbelt, not because the government tells me, but because, I saw a lot of driver's training
Yeah.
videos in school that showed how many people were killed, when they got thrown from their vehicles. So, so this, but the patronizing, you used the word, it was great. The patronizing aspect of this has a very strong economic component that, just like a parent would say, no, Johnny, you're not going to eat nothing but candy bars all day. You'll get sick. And then we got to go pay for, um, or take care of you when you're sick. So no, you can't eat candy bars all day. It's that kind of attitude that the government then comes in and places that on society,
Right.
because society has decided that it's responsible for your health care and my health care. I mean, when I get on the metro in DC and go in, guy gets on next to me, he's 500 pounds, has a pack of cigarettes in his pocket, a 2-pound bag of Cheeto potato chips he's eating on, plus a 2-quart Mountain Dew drink. I'm sitting there thinking, wait a minute, I'm responsible for his health.
Yeah, in some ways, the way it's set up. Yeah.
That's I was speaking up at a college in Pennsylvania. It had a room full of 300 whatever sophomores and juniors, and I had this happen. This guy on the metro. It was shortly after Obamacare went in, and I asked the class. I said, I want somebody here. I want one of you young college smart people to tell me. I told him a story about this guy, that came in with his, 500 pounds cigarette in his pocket, blah, blah, blah. I said, I want somebody here to tell me why I'm responsible for his health care. And the whole room just went silent. I mean, you could hear a pin drop. And I just stood there. I waited a minute. I waited 2 minutes. That's a long time to have a standoff in a classroom, And finally, this one girl, she kind of, raised her hand up there about third row back. I said, yes, ma'am. So what's the deal? And she said, your generation encouraged that to happen, so you're responsible.
Mm.
And I said, that's an interesting idea. I applauded her for having the courage to, to give an answer. I said, I don't agree with you, but I appreciate your answer. But if that's the best reasoning you can come up with, we're in an interesting place in our country. And nobody in the class would offer another apologetic or explanation for it. But yeah.
But as we said, though, I mean, there is some blame with society and government causing this, because like we mentioned earlier, the seed oils literally cause obesity. All the scientists and doctors, and you keep mentioning hydrogenated oils, but it's actually the vegetable oils that are not hydrogenated are even worse than that. That hasn't caught up yet in terms of our mainstream recognition of that fact, but it's quickly happening because of my show and others who are catching on to this scientific revolutionary movement of pushing the data out there. But yes, obesity is driven by vegetable oils being replaced instead of your ribeye fat and your steak and the butter that somebody down the road might make from their farms. And so, yeah, when you're told that, and think about it, they subsidize big soy, they subsidize these big vegetable oils so that the poor average Joe is eating vegetable oil food. He doesn't have to eat Dorito forms of it. He could eat the relatively so-called healthy salad with ranch dressing, which is soybean oil, and become obese. So really, it is government's fault that this has happened. There's also a human agency to it, but it's a paradox. It's a little bit of both.
It certainly is. I mean, because we choose not to participate in that system,
right?
And anybody has free agency to not participate in that system. Anyway, it's just I think it's important. I think it's important in this discussion to recognize the economic health paradigm that our society has gotten into. We've pushed ourselves in a corner here,
right?
By saying society is responsible for the economics of my healthcare, which means then that we have
Yeah,
that
we got to
we
be
have
stuck with poisonous food because of that, right? It's like
yeah,
a
well,
damned if we do, damned if we don't deal,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and that we have absolute interest, uh, authentic interest in making sure that you don't participate in risky behavior or risky, let's just say not behavior, just risky eating.
Right.
Okay. And so, so that justifies all of the market interventions that are supposedly uh, making sure food is safe.
Right.
Um, it justifies all that, even though, I would beg to question whether a Mountain Dew is as safe as raw milk. But
Right.
that's beside the point.
I would say we're at a precipice. We can go liberty, and I want to go liberty, but at some
Yes.
point, I'm a little pragmatic at this point because of the monumental health crisis we're experiencing as a nation. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm open. I know this sounds heretical to my libertarian friends, but I'm open that, heck, if we can't do this the liberty way, an incremental step is I think the government should consider prohibiting these vegetable oils as a carcinogenic thing that should not be consumed without at least having some kind of skull and crossbones insignia on the packaging of every food that has that, including your diet dressings, your health foods. If they've got corn oil, safflower, sunflower, if they've got soybean oil, canola oil, any of these oils, they should be treated. If we're going to live in a statist run society for the next few decades, let's do it the right way, not the dumb way. Okay. Even though it's all dumb, if that's what people want, at least do it in a wiser way, not a dumb way. And if you were to prohibit it, vegetable oils, Joel, I guarantee you there'd be a lot more people interested in your products because they'd have to get their fat somewhere, right? You got to get
Oh,
your calories from
yeah,
fat somewhere
yeah,
as a human.
yeah, absolutely.
I want I want to
We
land the plane here because we've had such a fascinating discussion, but I'm going to get these two weird questions in here real quick, real rapid fire. So, what if you were advising Governor Ron DeSantis? I'm sure you haven't had anybody ask that question to you. What would you tell him in the state of Florida, the free state of Florida that's known for going against? I mean, we just had our our health guy, Surgeon General, say, hey, don't take that product if you're 18 to 45. So we're willing to
Mhm.
go and do some bold
Yeah,
things. What
yeah.
would you tell? Say, hey, Ron, I got 5 minutes with you. Here's what I think your legislature should consider, and I think you should rally people towards this in Florida for food freedom. What would that be?
Yeah, I think it would be to create this kind of a statewide food sovereignty act that would at least allow local jurisdictions to create. Um, I mean, it's known as food sovereignty, but where you could have food commerce without inspection, without government involvement among voluntary consenting adults, and
Are you talking about basically like those associations and co-ops and stuff? Is that what you're talking about?
No. I'm
Yeah.
talking about direct farmer to consumer access. If I mean, in Florida right now, they are allowing a lot of pet food and stuff under the human food under the guise of pet food. But why go to that kind of whatever sleight of hand? Let's just be straight up. Say, yeah, this is human food, and I am a consenting adult, and I want it from Farmer B, and Farmer B wants to sell it to me. So we're going to get together and engage in a contractual arrangement. I'll pay him this much, and he gives it to me. I mean, this is just basic contract law. I mean, he can present it whether it be we're going to go back to contract law. We're going to go back to to freedom of choice for our body's fuel. We're going to unshackle farmers and let them access the marketplace. Um, I mean, it can be presented many different ways. We're gonna create unprecedented competition against the agri-industrial food complex. I mean, so there's enough material here to get conservatives and liberals all on base, and I just think it would be a great thing to take the shackles off of direct food commerce,
Now,
among neighbors.
Very good. If you were talking to Elon Musk again, would you think there's any place for having automated robots to help with some of the farming that you do?
Oh no, not at all, not at all. We don't need robots. We just need freedom.
So, what about like apps? You know, a lot of the younger generation, they like apps to help them remind them to do this or that. Do you think there's a way that apps, I know that that's, that may be a younger generation thing, but that would help you. Okay, look, have you tested your soil? Make sure you've updated your soil analysis. Have you, did you rotate your cows? Do you think people that are in a digital world would probably maybe be able to get into, because you look at all these farm games, everybody plays these video games that are farming. I was just thinking as I was talking to you, I wonder if a bridge to help Generation Z and millennials dabble in farming is if they had an app with the mindset of someone like a Joel Salatin behind it that's teaching people, hey, have you rotated your cows today? Did you do this? Did you do X? Did you do that? In that kind of organization of like keeping you in check and regulatory compliance could be an
Yeah,
intuitive way to help people. I don't know.
yeah. Well, it
Remember,
might be, but
there's always the
remember,
taxi cab driver until there's the Uber driver. So don't ever
yeah,
say never. Okay.
yeah, that's right. I mean, remember, you're talking to a guy that doesn't even have a smartphone, so
Okay.
uh, I just can hardly wrap my head around what we need on that sort of thing.
Joel, I'm going to the Global Produce Show. This is the big global convention, Orlando, coming up here. And it's where they do produce, fresh produce. It's all the distributors and retail
Uh-huh.
chains and everything. If there was something you wanted me to share with that industry, I'm going there as a media person to kind of cover what's going on in that because I really take the food system and seriously
Hmm.
on this show. What would you want maybe to impart? I know that's a little bit out of your wheelhouse. You're more in beef, but that is a big component of people's
Well,
daily
sure,
lives.
sure. Well, I mean, the big problem in the produce industry, uh, it's supermarket wide, but the big problem is their agreements that keep them from being able to buy from local people. I mean, we can't get anything of ours in a grocery store, even locally, because they've all got these big contracts from big distributors, and a lot of times they have non-compete clauses in them, and so the local producer never gets a chance in there. So
Is that a
these guys,
government regulation thing or just no?
no, that's totally private. It's just the way the system works. That has nothing to do with the government regulations. There are very few government regulations in produce. um
But there is like that. You've got I think it's the PMA where you have this, or what is the term where you have to, run your food through your produce through packing houses and things that are approved by the USDA. So that's where they get you, right? Instead of just picking your squash and selling it directly to your, as the farmer goes directly to the grocery chain, right?
yes, but I'm not sure that's uh, I'm not sure that that's a government thing. That
Okay.
is more an insurance thing.
Right.
There's really very little regulation on produce. I can go out here and park basically any place in the country on a wide place in the road and start selling tomatoes and peppers and squash.
Right.
Uh, there's pretty open freedom, which is why that has dominated farmers markets around the country.
Right.
And again, remember I said 25% of the grocery bill is dry goods, 25% is soft goods, produce and fruit, and 50% is meat, poultry, and dairy. That's where the regulations are. So these farmers markets generally are only really attacking 25% of the grocery bills, because the other 75% is too hard to get compliant in. And because it makes a big difference whether you're selling wheat or whether you're selling wheat flour, and that's dry goods. So that's another kind of side issue. But yeah, produce has quite a bit of freedom, and what we need is for grocery stores to actually walk what they talk. They say they want local and they want non-chemical and everything, but then they end up getting hydroponic soilless things from Mexico, and meanwhile their neighbor farmer 5 miles up the road can't it can't get a word in edgewise. So
You're not a fan of hydroponic produce.
I am not. No, I'm not.
The nutrition deficiency, is that the issue?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
it is. It doesn't have the nutrition at all.
What about aquaponics using the fish? Is that better?
That's better. So here's my compromise on the hydroponics and the aquaponics. If the medium, and I've seen some of this, and this is why I'm willing to compromise a little bit. I was at a place that was doing kind of an aquaponic thing, and they were growing their plants in a like a little pebble, a pebble medium, and that thing was full of worms and all sorts of things, and so there was enough surface area from a terrestrial thing, in this case little pebbles, to actually create soil microbial communities. And so if your medium grows worms, then I'm into it. And I don't mean worms on the side, I mean worms where the plant roots are, which means it can't be totally soilless. You can have a kind of hybrid soil system in a box of pebbles that is flushed with the with the nutrient dense water through it.
Very interesting. Hey, I really appreciate your time. And Joel, I think this is one of the best interviews I've heard you do. And not to say that I guess I have a little bit of a bias here, but I really covered a lot of different things that I think a lot of folks, maybe like you said, haven't heard you comment on as much. I want people to check out your podcast, Beyond Labels, right? It's available. What platform is the best way to get it?
Well, I actually don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have a smartphone. Let me check it out.
I don't have a smartphone, but beyond labels, and it'll pop up somewhere.
Yeah. Beyond Labels. It's on Apple Podcasts. I'm looking at it on YouTube. So Beyond Labels is his podcast. And I want people, if you want to read the blog that I was referencing on today's program, thelunaticfarmer.com/blog is where you can find Joel Salatin's blog on his musings about farming and his philosophy. Also, I wanted to let people know on Radio Land, if you want to learn about what he's doing at his farm, polyfacefarms.com is available where you can see what is going on there. Thank you.
Thank you, David. It's been a joy to be with you.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Thank you for your time, sir.
Okay.
Bye-bye.